Hello everybody, it's Ryan. Thanks for tuning in to another video from my channel. Today, I think it's long past time to seriously discuss the wild card prospects of independents and third-party candidates in the 2024 presidential election. Independents Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Cornel West, as well as likely Green Party nominee Jill Stein, are combining for an average of 17.2% in Real Clear Politics' national polling average. And this doesn't even include the eventual Libertarian Party nominee, who has finished third in the national popular vote behind the two major party candidates in each of the last three elections, as well as a centrist presidential campaign backed by the No Labels Party, which has already accumulated nearly $100 million in fundraising and gained ballot access in nearly half of all U.S. states, and is expected to announce its ticket in the spring of this year. Currently, Joe Biden sits at just 35.6% in this multi-candidate average, while Trump just barely eclipses 40% at 40.6%. Now, these are extraordinarily low numbers for major party candidates, and this is easily the most support we have seen third parties garner in presidential race polling since the Independent and Reform Party candidacies of Ross Perot in 1992 and 96. A lot of Americans have expressed their clear dissatisfaction about either of their likely choices for president in survey after survey, with up to 63% of Americans saying that they believe a major third party is needed, according to a Gallup survey from October of 2023. That's the highest mark since Gallup started asking this question in 2003. In another poll, this one from Monmouth University, just 27% of American voters said that they were at least somewhat enthusiastic about a rematch between Biden and Trump. Simply put, many voters say that they want more, and that has laid the foundation for these polling numbers, as well as growing potential for several extra candidates to qualify for ballots in critical battlegrounds across the entire country, many of which could be decided by just a few thousand votes, and therefore sway the election in either direction. It's a possibility that may soon become a likelihood, one that would have or could have more of an impact on this election cycle than practically anything else. Now, the uncertainty surrounding these extra candidacies has made polling even more difficult to figure out, as many voters won't fully understand just how many options they have until they step foot in the ballot box on November 5th. Though these developments have been especially worrisome for the Democratic Party, who have real reason to worry, as third-party candidates did spoil the election for them in 2016 and 2000. In the 2016 election, then Green Party nominee Jill Stein famously took enough votes away from Hillary Clinton in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan to help Donald Trump win the states and thereby receive enough electoral votes to be elected president. Clinton lost Wisconsin by 23,000 votes, while Stein received 31,000 votes. The Democrat also fell short of Trump in Pennsylvania by 44,000 votes, where Stein received 50,000. And finally, in Michigan, 2016's closest contest, Clinton lost to Trump by just 11,000 votes, and Stein received the support of 51,000 voters in the state. Had even just 90% of Green Party voters in those states cast their ballots for Clinton rather than Stein, which wouldn't have been all that surprising since the Green Party represents liberal policy views, Trump would have never become president. That should give anyone enough reason to pause for a second and acknowledge the potential influence of third-party bids in a 2024 election that is expected to be just as tightly contested. And remember, Stein received just 1% of the national popular vote in 2016. And in 2024, we're talking about third-party bids potentially getting up to 20%. With that in mind, both parties have made significant efforts to keep their voter bases intact, as Republicans boosted Kennedy during his Democratic primary run when he was running against Biden, then reversed course when he declared as an independent, and polls showed that Republicans liked his conspiratorial brand of populism. Donald Trump Jr. has labeled Kennedy as a Democratic plant, The Republican National Committee has repeatedly criticized him as a Democrat in independents' clothing, and right-wing media personalities have cautioned their followers not to support a candidate that they had praised months earlier. Nevertheless, several polls have shown Kennedy's support above 19% in recent weeks, setting a modern record for a non-major party candidate. And this is despite these growing efforts by the DNC and RNC to sour potential defectors against Kennedy, along with mostly negative coverage of him in the mainstream media. Now, granted, with all that being said, it should be said that independent and third-party candidates have historically underperformed their early polling numbers by the time of the election. The biggest issue facing pollsters here is that voters can actually be pretty poor predictors of their own behavior. Simply saying you will vote for a long-shot candidate weeks or months, like right now before Election Day, is much different than holding a ballot in your hand and voting for a candidate you know can't win. No third-party candidate has received a single electoral vote via the Electoral College in over 50 years, and America has not elected a non-major party presidential candidate since George Washington. Now, most recently, in 2016, Trump and Hillary Clinton hit record levels of unfavorability, just as Biden and Trump are now. And the combined support of the two most prominent third-party candidates in that election in 2016, Stein and Libertarian Gary Johnson, often cleared 10% in mid-election year polling. However, in the end, Johnson and other third-party candidates collectively received less than 6% of the popular vote, as third-party candidates do routinely fade in the stretch. Why, you may ask? Well, one reason is that what appears as support in early polling often isn't genuine. When voters are unimpressed by the major party nominees and want to express their frustration to a pollster, they may claim to back a third option. And of course, with the average favorability of Trump and Biden being well below average, according to 538, the double-digit polling numbers for RFK Jr. may be seen as a cry for help from the voting public. Now, a second reason independent candidates tend to fade later on in the election cycle is that the more voters learn about them, the less they like them. Early polling can't really capture how well these potential spoilers will wear over time. Today, Kennedy's familiar name, of course, likely boosts his poll numbers, but that may not hold up as less politically attentive voters learn more about him. Now, as of my latest 2024 January forecast update, which you can find on my website at electionpredictionsofficial.com, independents and third-party candidates are currently projected to receive 8% of support in the national popular vote across all 50 states. This would be the most since 1996. Of course, across all of the states, third-party performance can vary significantly. After all, the roster of third-party candidates is different every cycle and different in every state, as it is harder to get on the ballot in some states than others. And some individual candidacies can generate unique levels of support in a given state while faltering elsewhere. Now, my forecast has the third-party vote share in states ranging from as low as 5% all the way up to 18%. These numbers are based on patterns from recent history. Now, the national third-party vote share in this century has ranged from just 1% in 2004 to 6% in 2016, with the average being 2.7% in the 6 elections since 2000. The state with the highest average third-party vote share in that time is, unsurprisingly, Utah, at 8.2%, as that average is boosted by independent Evan McMullen's anti-Trump Republican candidacy in 2016. He got 21.3% in his home state of Utah that year, by far his best performance anywhere in the country, and also by far the best single third-party candidacy in any state this century. Though it is worth noting that the third-party vote share in Utah was higher than the national third-party average in all 6 elections this century. So while 2016 was, of course, a bit of a fluke and very high, third-party performance in Utah has otherwise been good in recent years, and that leads to the current projected third-party vote share in Utah being 17.2%. That said, though, Alaska is actually projected to have the highest third-party vote share in 2024, according to my forecast, at 18.6%, which is actually also unsurprising given its quirky politics, such as electing a one-term independent governor in 2014 and sometimes featuring cross-party coalitions in its state legislative chambers. More broadly, though, third parties do tend to perform better in states in the West. Along with Utah and Alaska, there's Colorado, New Mexico, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho, just to name a few. The logic here actually makes a lot of sense. The two consistently balloted third parties, the Libertarians and the Greens, have greater appeal to West Coast liberals and rural Westerners. This data also aligns with a regional breakdown in a recent Marist poll that had Kennedy doing best out west at 22%, although his Midwest support was very similar at 19%, with the South and the Northeast lagging behind at 13% and 14%, respectively. This also aligns with the fact that, meanwhile, the South dominates the list of low third-party vote shares since 2000. In fact, 9 of the 10 lowest projected third-party vote shares in my forecast come from states that were part of the Confederacy during the Civil War, with the one exception being Oklahoma, which, by modern terms, could effectively be part of the South. Of greatest interest, though, to us as election analysts, as well as the Democratic and Republican parties themselves, is how third parties tend to perform in the key battlegrounds. 7 states were decided by 3 points or less in 2020: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Georgia and North Carolina in the South are among the 10 lowest performing third-party states, while Pennsylvania and Michigan are also on the lower end of the average. In fact, the Keystone State was just a couple hundredths of a point from being in that bottom 10. Wisconsin, meanwhile, is basically right at the average, and Arizona is a little above average. Of these core swing states, Nevada has had the highest average third-party vote share in recent elections. The Silver State does offer voters an explicit none of these candidates option, which is unique and likely contributes to this higher average. In fact, this option has gotten at least 0.4% of the vote in every election this century, and that's about how much higher Nevada's average third-party voting is compared to the rest of the country. Arizona and Nevada being a little higher than the average also, of course, just fits in with them being Western states, given the heightened support that recent third-party candidates have gotten in this region. So, ultimately, while there are several states with a recent track record of clearly higher than average third-party performances, the states most likely to decide the 2024 election are not really among them. That doesn't mean that third-party votes in these states are unimportant. It just means that we shouldn't expect third-party candidates to do better here than they do nationally. It may also be that the argument that voting third-party is a wasted vote is perhaps most persuasive in these top battlegrounds. That does it, though, for today's video. Let me know what other forecast-related videos, or just more broad and general 2024 presidential election videos you would like to see in the future. Big shout out to my channel members on screen here. Thank you so much for your support. If you would like to become a member, go ahead and click that join button below this video to receive exclusive perks. Make sure to subscribe to my channel down below, and please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Also, be sure to check out electionpredictionsofficial.com for my 2024 presidential election forecast as well. You can check out more content from my channel here, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. EP out.